DC is incredibly unpleasant to be in. We are knocking at the door of eliminating the filibuster, which any Senate staffer will tell you is what keeps the Senate from being the House. And they mean that as an insult. So it's definitely not a good time to be down there right now. I think the assassination of Charlie Kirk is certainly on the forefront of people's minds. The physical violence component of it really can't be under stressed.
I saw Michael McCall also announcing his resignation, or not resignation, but not seeking re-election once again. So this is happening in the House as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is happening in the House. We're up to 2 House Republicans from Texas, if I'm not mistaken. The one that was really surprising to me is some of the farm state members. I'm thinking of like Joni Ernst, for example. Those members should be in really safe re-elections, but the potential for having to vote on tariffs, the trade wars, the discontent with farmers are all issues that are plaguing them, aside from just the general lack of comedy in DC right now.
You two are grizzled pros at this. I'm the hack. David, they're just retiring because they're getting out front of the Democrats winning the House. Am I too simplistic?
That might be a little too simplistic, I think. But Henrietta, you bring up the kind of difficulty in farm country especially, and I think there's been a theme to the newspapers and news sites I've looked at over the course of the last week, and that is this level of dissatisfaction and worry among soybean farmers in particular about their prospects in light of these trade policies, not having a buyer in China. How does all of this sort itself out?
This needs to be sorted out at the top levels. Like, this needs to be a prominent topic of conversation between Besant and Jameson Greer in Spain today with their Chinese counterparts. We need to be talking about soy purchases. Unfortunately, when we start inserting NVIDIA and TikTok into the conversation, I don't think there's a place for any kind of give on soy purchases. And we're seeing, and the farmers' main concern is that they are permanently losing market share to Brazil and Argentina from the world's largest purchaser of soybeans at 61%. So the farming community is doing something that really you don't see from a lot of other businesses. I would talk about, car dealerships, for example. They're a huge political donor base, and they're being really quiet about the tariffs. They're only hiking new car prices by 1%, but used car prices, which is the bulk of their sales, are up 6% as they try to stay on Trump's good side. The farmers, though, are putting out public letters, and they have been for several weeks now, and giving a lot of news interviews on the record saying how problematic the president's trade war is for them. They do not have any sales to China going forward, and that's a death knell for them.
I look at this and wonder, is a bailout inevitable? So I gather that Trump won isn't prologue for all of this.
Farm Aid.
Farm Aid, yeah.
Willie Nelson could play.
As he is, I think tonight. But, Henrietta, I'm curious, is that where all of this is headed? Are we going to see a $20, $30 billion bailout, the likes of which we saw the last time around?
Yeah, but we got 3 of them last time around. I suspect we'll get another one this time around. There's already rumblings from members, specifically on the House side and the agriculture committees, calling for the insertion of a farm aid package in the upcoming CR that will avert a government shutdown. So it's definitely already part of it. There was some of that in the One Big Beautiful Bill. There was some rejiggering of some of the methodologies and accounting for how farmers get subsidized, and that's going to be expanded on in the next package, I would suggest.
Another dumb question, only Henrietta Trays would know this. When there's a farm bailout, who gets a check? A mom and pop farmer with 200 pigs on a ranch in, I don't know, Kansas? Or is it like corporate America gets the check?
It's both, and it's usually run through the Department of Agriculture, through a really small entity there that was heavily accessed during the president's first term as the U.S.-China trade war kicked off. They replenished this fund that goes specifically to commodity purchases, and that's how the money gets funneled. And I suspect that's what they'll do again. They're having pretty advanced talks about it now, but still relatively rudimentary. There's no text, but I would imagine that's what they do.
If we're growing tomatoes on the deck, do I count as a farmer?
Tom's beefsteaks on the deck. Yeah. There you go. Henrietta, we have this irregular series with you where we ask you what a recess is going to be like for lawmakers when they go home to their district. So let's pick that up again. Let's do another edition of it as we face a 10-day recess here starting at the end of the week. In the past, there have been these town hall meetings where there's been a lot of commotion and outrage. As we look toward this one, and on the heels of that, 2 legislative days to hammer out some sort of deal here on whether or not to avert a government shutdown, what does that recess look like for members of the House and the Senate?
It looks bad. I mean, they are getting increased funding for police protection. They're going to need all of that. I suspect most of the events would be inside if they're held at all. I imagine we hear a lot more about like virtual town halls. We had already seen so much Democratic outcry from Democratic constituents at Republican town halls across the country that a lot of members had been putting up placards about the rules of civility and canceling events outright. I think you've seen a lot of cancellations and a lot of concern about political violence. And there's an undercurrent feeling that, this is going to lead somewhere else. There will be another political violence act. So I know that's top of mind for a lot of members.
Henry, last question. In your most recent note, you put 25% odds on a shutdown here. What gives you the confidence here to keep it? What is relatively low, I think, by a lot of standards. There have been many people who think that Democrats are going to allow one to happen this time around. Why do you feel like it's unlikely?
Sure. And I'm usually on the low end, and I don't put a lot of stock in the narrative that there's going to be a shutdown, especially when we're 15 days out from the 30th. That's like a lifetime in D.C. Language. I get my information from staff, which I think differentiates me from some other folks. I don't really talk to members all that often. I really very much care what staff has to say because they're the ones with the finger on the pulse. And the read that I get is that House members are much more inclined to encourage a shutdown. The senators just aren't there. And until that changes, I'm going to keep my low odds at 25%. We're probably going to take this into September 29th and 30th. Things will look funky. Wow. This week is going to be a lot of drama. But with a 10-day recess, a lot can change.